August Wilson is one of America's most consistently good playwrights. He records the black experience in America, taking it decade by decade. Think of these plays: Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, The Piano Lesson, Fences, Two Trains Running, Joe Turner's Come and Gone. Of his 7 plays, 6 have come to Broadway. He has 3 more to write about the black experience, taking it decade by decade in the 20th century. He has won every award there is to win, including 2 Pulitzer Prizes, 1 Tony, and 5 Tony nominations. His latest is 7 Guitars. Here's a scene from that play, which opens on March 28th on Broadway.
My mother's dead. She come to me in a dream. She said, "Don't let nobody get in your way. Anybody get in your way, you go around them. If you can't go around them, knock them down." I had 7 ways to go. They cut that down to 6. I say, well, let me try one of them 6. They cut it down to 5. Every time I push, they pull. They cut it down to 4. I say, what's the matter? Everything can't go wrong all the time. They cut it down to 3. I say, well, 3 is better than 2. I really don't need but 1. They cut it down to 2. You see, I'm going to Chicago. If I gotta buy a graveyard and kill everybody I see, I'm going to Chicago. I don't want to live my life without. Everybody I know live without. I don't want to do that. Look, I don't know what y'all think of yourself, but I think I'm supposed to have something, have anything, whatever it is. My mama lived and died and ain't had nothing. If it ain't nothing but peace of mind, let me have that. My mama ain't had 2 dimes to rub together. Ain't had but 1 stick. She got to do without the fire. Some kind of warmth in her life. I don't want to live in a cold house. It's a cold world. Let me have a little shelter from it. That's all I want. Floyd Barton's going to have his record. Floyd Barton's going to Chicago. Floyd! Floyd!
7 Guitars opening on Broadway March 28th. I'm pleased to have back on this program August Wilson. There's so much to talk about, but let me just say, you still have a lot of decades, 2 at least, to explore. I mean, there's plenty of time for you to write a lot of other plays exploring the black experience.
Oh, yeah, I have the 80s and the 90s and the first decade of the...
From 1900 to 1910, you can still...
Exactly.
I mean, that's a richness there to go explore.
Yes.
Why are you doing this? Why is this your theme?
Well, I started, I wrote my first 3 plays and I set them in different decades, and I thought, why don't I just continue to do this? And as it began to grow, it gave me a focus and something to concentrate on, so that it became larger than the 1 play. And I think it's important to, at least it'll be my version or my vision of a black American experience, the parts of the experience that are important for each decade of the 20th century. So I've taken it on myself to do that.
The blues and jazz are America's original music forms, aren't they?
Yes, without question, yeah.
You know, sort of, is it more of a black experience, you think, than a... for the most part?
The music?
That's reflected in the music.
It's reflected in, well, it is the African approach to the world, African approach to music. It came, out of the African experience in America, sure.
Ma Rainey was written in when?
1981.
That was the first?
That was the first one.
Yeah. 7 have been written since then. 6 have come to Broadway, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Let me talk about 7 Guitars. It did not begin the way it now goes to Broadway.
Right.
That's a safe statement.
Yes, yes.
How did it begin? What was the idea in August Wilson's head, knowing that there's this skeleton that he'd already established, this playing field that he'd already claimed as his own?
Yes. Well, I wanted to, in the 40s, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show the blues, and I wanted to show a look behind the blues, to the interior psyche of the blues man and how the songs actually came into being. And I was doing this and trying to show the relationship of the blues man to white society in a relationship to black society. In white society, they were often viewed as vagrants and drunkards, etc. And in black society, they were viewed as the carriers of the tradition. And I began to work the play with these 7 guys, 7 bluesmen.
It started off with 7 in your head?
It started off with 7, and they were sort of in a lineup, and someone named Floyd Barton had been murdered, and they were questioning these guys, and they thought by virtue of their answers you could sort of piece together Floyd Barton's life. And when I was working on this happened in my imagination. Of course, this woman walked on stage, or walked in here.
In your head?
In my head, yes.
This was Vera?
Yes, and one of the guys come over and said, you know, what is she doing here? This is supposed to be an all-man play. Tell her to get out of here. And I said, let me handle this. And I went over and I asked her what she was doing, and she said she wanted her own space. And I said, you want your own scene? And she said, no, I want my own space. And I wasn't quite sure what she meant by that, and I thought the best way to deal with the situation was to close my notebook and walk away from it. And I came back a couple months later and opened up my tablet and said, okay, now you have your own space. But what I was trying to do was I was trying to write a play that was set in the 40s that was representative in some ways of black America in the 40s without any women in it, and that simply wasn't going to be. So I let her in the play, and when she came in, 2 other women came in behind her.
Now, why would you try to do that? Why would you try to write a play about the black experience, even connected to bluesmen, without including women?
Because I was foolish. I mean, I wasn't really thinking, you know. But,
and they just sit there. But it's in your imagination. They said, let us end this play.
Let us end the play, yes, absolutely.
And it began with Vera.
It began with Vera. I opened up, and a guy came and knocked on the door, and he had a radio under one arm and a chicken under the other.
That was Canwell.
Canwell.
Right.
He had come courting. And then I began to work the play, and things began to change. And eventually you ended up with the play that we have now.
Well, it's not quite that easy, August. You
No,
didn't eventually end up with the play you have now.
There's a lot of work involved in it.
Because, you know, I mean, I would be frustrated if I was an actor in one of your plays in its early production. I
can only just speak so highly of these actors that are in 7 Guitars because we have thrown everything at them. They have had to relearn lines, unlearn lines, give speeches over to other characters, and they did this in a sterling fashion.
Now, can you imagine? Here, this playwright, 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, has given lines that this character and this actor playing this character loves, gives him a chance to be poetic and to embrace an experience. And along comes the playwright and says, no, I'm going to take these lines and I'm going to give them to this character.
Yes.
That's enough to make a grown man cry.
Yes, sometimes. But it depends, you see, because there's a lot of other stuff that the character, I mean, it's not all the stuff that he has to do, you see. So spread it around a little bit.
But you do it because you feel that certain characters need to be strengthened, to be what? Given more identity.
And more, to be clarified. I'm constantly working to clarify the story. And sometimes in developing the characters, you can only give so much stage time over to each one. And sometimes it's important to give it to one character more than the other.
Mm-hmm. But you also began to add other women in this play.
I ended up with 3 women and 4 men, yes.
And then, but some of is it Canewell? You pronounce it Canewell?
Canewell.
Canewell. Canewell.
Yes.
Some of Canewell's character becomes Floyd.
Yeah, it was always Floyd. I was just a little confused of who it was.
You were confused?
Yes, it was always Floyd. I mean, there's some things that can only be... actually, you know, when I hear these voices and I started writing, the character Canewell, he had a lot to say. And he was the one who talked most readily to me, and consequently I learned a lot from him. And some of the things I decided, well, it's best if I give it to someone else.
When they write about you, August Wilson begins with character.
Yes.
They're right. Your plays begin with character.
Yes. That's my approach to playwriting. Plot is secondary. What I'm trying to do is to create the world of Black America and to create that environment and to show it that it's capable of offering sustenance, so that when you have left your father's house, that you do not go out in the world alone, that you are fully clothed in manners and a way of life that is uniquely and particularly and peculiarly yours as a Black American. So I'm interested in that world, that cultural landscape. And then I'm interested in character. And then we can talk about plot and various other elements that go in the making of a drama.
How important is location? Because this didn't start where it ended. It ends in Pittsburgh, yes?
Yes.
It didn't start there. Finally, you said, I got to go home with this play.
Well, it's what I know best, I think. I thought 40s blues, I'll set it in Chicago. That'll be, you know, appropriate thing. But I found I don't know much about Chicago. Although I suspect black life in Chicago in the 40s was not very much different than black life in Pittsburgh or Detroit, for that matter. But it's what I knew best, and I think you write what you know.
You don't live in Pittsburgh.
I do not.
You live in Seattle.
I live in Seattle.
Because?
It's a nice town.
Yeah.
It's a nice town.
It's a great town for the Seattle Repertoire. Is a great place to stage plays.
Town,
yeah.
Sure.
Is it the Seattle Repertoire? I don't know the name of it. I just know that there are a lot of plays.
Seattle Repertoire Theater is yes. I lived in Pittsburgh 33 years, and I left and I went to St. Paul. I lived there 12, 13 years and moved out to Seattle. And they're all very nice cities, and they all have their own.
Why the title, go back to your play, 7 Guitars? Are they the 7 instruments you're playing in this play?
They're the 7 characters. Each one of them is symbolically a guitar. Yeah.
Why a guitar?
Well, guitars are so important to the black experience. The bluesman is the bluesman's instrument. Yeah, it's a beautiful instrument. Yeah.
Do you play?
I do not. No.
Ever wanted to play?
I toyed with the idea, and Keith David, who plays the lead role for Floyd Barton, he has learned to play just in the process of doing this.
Oh, really? Floyd Barton is the central character whose death, you start the play at a wake for Floyd Barton.
Yes. And his playing has encouraged me. I said, well, you can learn that, and you know.
Oh, he told you could learn it?
Yeah.
When this process, it's a luxury you have. You opened, as I remember, in 1995, in Chicago at the Goodman Theater.
That's correct.
By 1996, you were in Los Angeles, January of 96, a year later.
Yes.
In between, you had gone to Boston and where?
Huntington Theater in Boston, and ACT in San Francisco, and then to Los Angeles.
It's expensive to keep a play on the road as August Wilson tries to get it right.
I've been blessed and very fortunate to have that support from those theaters, and and invite me to come and do the work there and to continue my exploration and trying to get it right.
Some have said that you are so, because of your reputation, you know what's coming, because of how strong you are, because you have so laid out this experience, that in a sense your success keeps other playwrights, black playwrights, in the shadows. Do you think it's true?
I do not at all.
Well, you've heard that before.
I've heard something similar to that. Of course.
Wait, did I get it wrong? What have you heard?
I think you got it right. I don't understand the logic behind it. I think, if anything, it has opened up. It's helped to develop an audience for black theater, and if anything, it has opened doors and opportunities for black for theaters to do more black plays. Because they've already done my plays, and so they search around. I think now there's an explosion of black theater, and I think it's largely because the theaters are saying, okay, we've already done August Wilson plays, and we have a demand in the audience for black theater. What shall we do next? And so they're going back, and they're even doing some revivals in black theater.
You start this play with Floyd's wake, and then have flashbacks.
Yes.
And is this a murder mystery? Or is it something else?
It's a murder mystery of a sort. In a sense it is, but though it's not really that important. There are not clues along the way to, like, who did the murder.
But there are clues about what?
There are clues about the character and the need of the character to fulfill themselves, and the idea of fate, and the idea of taking responsibility, and of being responsible for the things that happen to you, and taking it in your own hands. Those things are more important than putting out little clues about this person or that person. So it's not a discovery of clues till you ultimately arrive at who the murderer is. It's a discovery of character, so you see why the murder occurs. It's more important why than who.
in a sense, the killer did it because he needed something.
Yes.
Right? He was driven by some need of his own.
Yes.
Some reaching of his own.
Yes, and also the victim had something to do with his own.
Yeah, and we can't say more because we'll give it away.
I think so.
All right. If I read each of these plays, or go see each of these plays, I will come away with what understanding, what feeling about the black experience in America in the 20th century?
Well, I think you'll come away with the idea and the knowledge that black Americans have their own culture, that while we share some commonalities as American, that there are things that are unique and peculiar to us. While we all decorate our houses, we do it differently. We all, our social intercourse is different, and so much of what we do, although we all do the same things, that we do it differently. And you will have seen the way that black America does it.
Is it a story of oppression?
That's a large part of the black American story is a story of oppression, of course, yes.
And what is the quality of black Americans that you want to communicate, and the sense of
that
we have much to be proud of in our culture and much to be proud of in our connections?
It's the resiliency of the human spirit, and to see that despite the oppression, to see that spirit remain vital and strong, and to continue to express life and to express it with a certain vigor, even despite all of the problems that are attendant to being black in America.
Why was there and why is there so much resilience?
Just simply the nature of the people. I think it's a spiritual connection.
Spiritual.
It's just without question. Yeah, it's how you approach life, your worldview, the ability to possibly the ability to sing that song, that spiritual song, that the ability to absorb and not be broken. You know, I think is a large part of it.
A sense of what? What kind of spiritual message?
Well, it is spiritual in a sense, in terms of the spirit, in terms of, you know, the inner strength of the people.
When you started out, raised by your mother in Pittsburgh, writing once in school, you wrote a brilliant essay or thing about Napoleon. I'm not sure how brilliant it was, but it was, at least it was pretty good.
Yes.
And a white principal or teacher?
No, actually it was a black teacher.
It was a black teacher.
Yes.
Said, you couldn't have done this, right?
Yes.
This had to be plagiarized.
Yes.
And you said what?
I told him that I wrote my name on it. He said, prove you wrote it. I said, well, there's my name there. And I didn't feel I should do any more than that, offer any more proof other than my footnotes and the fact that I said I wrote it.
When did you know that I want to write?
I think I had a dispute with my mother when I was 14, and I moved into the basement and said, I'll become a writer. And I lived in the basement for about a week. And I thought then, when I went to the library in Pittsburgh, and I discovered the Negro section of the library, and there were 30 or 40 books there, and I began to read them all, and I thought, well, I want to have my book up here, and one day I want to be a writer like Langston Hughes and Claude McKay and Arnold Bontes.
Ralph Ellison.
And Ralph Ellison, The Invisible Man, which I read when I was 14.
But you said, I want to be here with this pantheon of black writers. I want my books and my name to be there.
Yes. And
so what'd you do then?
Well, when I was 20, I claimed it. When I bought my first typewriter, and I said, I am a writer, and good, bad, or indifferent. And when I bought the typewriter, that meant that I wasn't going to be a lawyer or a bus driver or anything. I was going to be
Your mother was not thrilled.
She was not. She actually thought I was wasting my life, and I was talented and intelligent and was doing, and as she would say, doing nothing with it.
So, is she alive?
Unfortunately not. She died in 1983.
So she died about the time
just before Ma Rainey opened in New York.
Oh, my God.
Yes. But,
You've thought about that before?
Yes, I have, but I have my brothers and sisters and my aunt, and you know, they all share in the things that she wasn't able to.
Yeah. Why do you think you become this messenger, this communicator of the Black experience in our century in terms of playwriting?
Well, I would say simply because I continued to work. You know, after Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, I had an opportunity when the Hollywood studios were calling and people wanted me to write things, and I said no, I want to continue to work as a playwright, and I sat down and I wrote the plays, and then I did two, and I wrote another, and I wrote another, and I continued. Had I not done that, then I don't think that none of this obviously.
You went to Minnesota for a while, 10 years?
I went to Minnesota.
Was that a playwriting group or something? Or?
The Playwright Center in Minneapolis was my first home as a playwright, and New Dramatists here in New York. I became a member of that organization. Of course, the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, National Playwrights Conference. Those three organizations were very supportive and helpful of me as a playwright early in my career.
What difference did Lloyd Richards make?
Lloyd made a difference. He was the director. He, as the dean of the Yale Repertory Theater, and it's dean of the drama school and artistic director of the Yale Repertory Theater, he offered me a home at Yale Rep. And he became the producer of the plays, and we began to work together, and it has been good and fruitful.
It's been, but you've described it once as you're the boxer.
Yes.
And he's the trainer.
The trainer.
And he says, you say, you go out there.
Well, he offers the support and he does the thing.
But you go out and fight the fight.
I go out and fight the fight. I write the play.
So what does he bring to it?
He brings an understanding, as a black man, he brings an understanding of the characters, and the fact that we've done the 6 plays now, there's a seamlessness to all of the plays, and that there's the same 2 artistic sensibilities that work in them, and they become all of one thing.
Yeah. Is the process that you go through mainly your process, or is it other people coming in, wading in with ideas and opinions about the character? Or is it mainly you, the creator, who says, you know, as you go from one place to the other, you began to grasp, you got to make these changes for balance, for proportion, for character stability?
It's my process. I pretty much keep my own counsel, although I'm open to, you know, suggestions from anyone, any audience member, anyone. But I have something that I'm working toward, and I have, you know, a sense of aesthetics and my own sense of the way I want the play to be and the way the scene should build or not build, and I work toward that.
Why playwriting and not novels?
Boy, a novel is a vast, uncharted ocean. I honestly don't know how anyone writes a novel. Playwriting seems to be more manageable, you know, for me. I was writing poetry before, and the plays offered me a larger canvas and in an immediacy. You can get an immediate feedback from the audience.
And it hasn't been hard for you to resist Hollywood?
It hasn't been hard, no.
Yeah.
Early on it was.
Because of the attraction of fame and money.
Because of the money, primarily, you know. But no, I pretty much held to, you know, something larger than that, something that I wanted to accomplish for my life.
What time do you get up in the morning?
It varies. Sometimes I go to bed at 3 o'clock. Obviously, I'll get up later.
Yeah.
I don't.
But you write in restaurants?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You still do that?
It's a habit from when I was a poet, 20-year-old poet.
Yeah. So you go to a restaurant with a legal pad and a...
Oh, now I've learned to be more conspicuous than that. I write on small little index cards.
But you write in longhand?
I write in longhand, yes.
And at some point you go home and you put it into a computer or something?
Yes, from 11 to 3 in the morning, generally.
11 to 3?
Yeah, something like that. Those early morning hours is a good time for me.
Now, do you change it when you do that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So the process of what's on the page, in your handwriting to what you put in the computer, is still an ongoing editing process?
Yeah, one is a more I can't find the word, but it's a different process. One is more cerebral kind of process, the other.
And the characters take on a life of their own as you introduce them. I mean, you found Vera in your head knocking on the door saying, give me some space.
They take on a life of their own.
Do you find yourself halfway through the play and some other character shows up and says, I belong in this play too?
So far, no.
No, so they're there by the time you set it down?
I assemble, because if that happened, that would be a lot of rewriting, and I'm a little smarter than that, I think. You know, so I get them all together and lined up before I start, you know, more or less.
Have you ever wanted to or been moved to go away from this ongoing march to record in plays the Black experience, decade by decade, with a different decade as a setting for each play?
No, I haven't. Once I accomplish that, I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll sit down and try to write one of those novels, but in the meantime, I just want to, you know, I have the 3 plays to do. And
how will you know when you're finished?
When I finish the series?
Yeah.
Well, I've got 3 more to do, and I'll do them, and I'll say at least there are the 10 plays, one for each decade of the 20th century.
And that's it? I mean, it'll be that complete?
It'll be that complete, and then I don't know what, I may start over, I may, you know, do something else. I'm going to continue to work, of course, and, you know.
Does your view on this change? In other words, do you see the Black experience as you were writing 7 Guitars differently than you saw it when you were writing the piano lesson?
No, well, question, yeah, and it changes, and it's...
Because that was about a slave and a piano and selling the piano for some farmland, etc.
Yes, but the playwright changes, you see, because the playwright lives in a world in which there's all kinds of crazy things going on, you know, wars here.
There are no still waters.
And all of those things influence me as a human being, and they influence the writing. And so, yeah, I see it different. I approach each one of them different because I change.
How have you changed?
As an artist, I've grown as an artist, and as an individual, I think I've grown, and I've come to understand, you know, some things. I'm still trying to. Writing is a process of self-discovery. I'm trying to discover the self.
Is it easier for you now?
Sometimes it is. It depends.
Some days it is, and some days it isn't.
Some days it isn't.
Yeah.
But I feel more confident now. I feel more comfortable now that I'm able to articulate my ideas in a dramatic fashion.
No writer's block for you.
I don't recognize such a thing. I simply get up and walk away.
If it doesn't come, you go do something else.
Absolutely.
And then you come back.
Yes.
I mean, you just say, I'm not going to deal with this, because if I'm not writing, then it's because that's something else I ought to be doing. I'll go do that now.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. What other, have you fleshed out what you're going to write about the 80s and 90s?
The 80s, I sort of started working on my 80s play, and set in 1984, and one of the characters is his father has killed someone, his surrogate father has killed someone, he's killed someone, he has a 17-year-old son who's getting ready to kill someone. And I'm trying to deal with the Black America, these kids in 1984 with these guns and the idea. But my approach to that is I don't want to deal with the kids, I want to deal with their parents, which is myself and my generation. I want to deal with how that breakdown in the family occurred and exactly where we were at, and all of that sort of thing. So I'm going at it in a somewhat
Where
different
are
way.
you in that experience now?
I started writing. I have a character that has a scar on his face, and I generally start with a line of dialogue. And the line I started with he had been in the penitentiary, and he said, we were sitting out in the yard, so he said to me, "Where you get that scar from?" So he didn't say how you get that scar. He said, "Where you get that scar from? Like you go down the street and get one, or like where'd you get that scar? Like maybe he thought it was his and he wanted to have one." So I kind of laughed and spit out my razor blade in my hand and hit him across the face with it. And he said, "Now you got one too." He didn't say nothing to me for the next 5 years. I guess he said too much, huh? And I go, wow, who is this guy? That's the character.
That's the opening lines of the play.
Well, it may not be the opening lines, but that's my lead into the character. That's the first word this character said to me. And I really want to ask him where he got the scar from, but I'm scared. I know there's a story there somewhere.
Does this character have a name?
So far he doesn't. No.
He doesn't?
No.
Has a face?
He doesn't have a face.
He just has a line.
He just has a line.
And a scar.
And a scar.
And a question.
Yes. And from that, we'll grow different things, and he'll talk to me some more. He'll talk to someone, whoever he's talking to. I have no idea. I don't know exactly where he's at. Though I did thought that I would start off the play with 7 gunshots and carousel music.
Yeah. 7 gunshots and carousel music.
Yes. At the beginning of the play, so far.
Can I give you some advice?
Yes.
Put some women in there. You are, in the end, optimistic about black Americans in 1996, notwithstanding all of the pain, all of the oppression, all of the experiences that you have visited on so many dialogues?
Yes.
Why?
One must be hopeful.
Yeah.
You know,
it's the spiritual, the spirit thing, and the resilience thing, and what else?
It's all of that together, and the assurance that you can survive, that you can.
Yeah. We have prevailed through the most difficult part. We cannot stop now.
Exactly.
When you create the characters, do they ever, I mean, have you ever had a character that just went away, that you eliminated?
No,
that
not
stopped
really.
speaking to you, that didn't, you lost their voice?
Not really. I can't say they have. That I've had characters that my problem is I've had unruly characters.
Yeah.
You know, where they sort of like want to take over and they want to talk too much, and so you sort of have to.
And was
censor
Headley
them.
that?
Canewell was that.
Canewell
was entirely out of control at various points. You know, and it was a bit more difficult finding Headley because I didn't know him as well. Parts of him I knew, but then I had to.
So many great African-American actors have been through an August Wilson play. I mean, it's almost a...
I've been fortunate. I have had a great cast every time I go out. You know, we've been able to assemble very good cast. So it's another blessing that I count.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It is always good to have you here, and much success. I mean, the critics have been, what they've seen so far they like. I guess as a final go-round when you hit the Broadway stage as well.
Yes, of course.
But you're optimistic and you feel good about where this play is.
I do, yeah. I like it a lot.
Do you care what they say?
Of course, yes. Sure.
Of course you do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sure.
We go from playwriting to the world of opera. When we come back, one of the great stars of the opera stage visits us in an interview that I recorded recently. Stay with us.